Hi, my name is Melanie, and for our research project, I decided to research the history and evolution of the film and theater industry during the Roaring Twenties. So, early on during this decade, movies were completely silent. They contained no noise, sound effects, or any special dialogue whatsoever. Instead, they had live orchestras and musicians play during the film and movie theaters. And overall, these movies were fairly popular with the public, as many of them described it to be a form of entertainment that really helped them escape reality. And what I mean by that was the main people that were attending these movies were members of the lower class, and they used this as a way to distract themselves from the hardships they were facing, from the financial struggles, and from any type of struggle that they were truly facing during this decade. They used movies as a way to escape and entertain themselves away from all their troubles in real life. Movie theaters were often praised during this decade because of their structure. They were described to be beautiful, extravagant palaces and were commonly known by the public as picture palaces. The architect and structure of them was truly one of a kind. They were extravagant, electric, and the specific art style that they had was truly praised for how big and grand they really were. Here we have some more pictures of them. You can see how big they really are, how many seats they are, and you can even see the curtain, how in back then the curtain used to open to reveal the screen, to reveal the picture that was going to be playing, which was just any random film that was just playing that day. You can see how tall they were. You can see how many more seats are here and how many levels they were. And here you can just see like a side view of it, and it's really beautiful how they were built back then. It's nothing to compare like to what we have right now in AMC and Cinemax. It was truly a different experience, these movie theaters. Early on in the 1920s, some popular silent movies that were during this decade were Sherlock Jr., which came out in 1924, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which came out in 1923, and one of my personal favorites, which is The Phantom of the Opera, which came out in 1925. And the midpoint of this decade came a change that would end up changing the film industry altogether. Movie directors and the cinema world started adding small dialogue in the films, which was a huge deal. Prior to this, movies that or and films did not have any characters talking within each other. They did not have any conversation. It was just acting in pure silence. So this was the first time that people were going to see actors fully communicate with each other. These movies were often referred by the public as talkies or talking pictures. They were also known for being exclusively short because it was still something that the cinema world was still experimenting and testing out to see how the public would react and how they would have their personal opinions on it. Well, this ended up having a huge positive reaction with one of the first ever talking movies, which was The Jazz Singer. The Jazz Singer came out in 1927, and it turned out to be a major hit with audiences around the country. This movie inspired other movie directors, the film industry altogether, and ended up revolutionizing movie standards, plots, and officially putting an end to the silent film era. I watched a few clips of this movie when I was researching, and this movie compared to the silent movies was a big change. They were singing, you can see the characters actually feeling more alive, the actors expressing themselves more, and it was just a new way of entertainment that really changed the film industry. It was really interesting to see a silent black and white movie and seeing another black and white movie, but with more expression, with more tone, with more dialogue. With the success of The Jazz Singer and the addition of sound effects, dialogue, and a variety of music in these movies, audiences' attendance spiked all throughout the country. There were sold out theaters because audiences found this new and improved form of entertaining amazing and groundbreaking. Movie theaters were packed with soaring audiences. Many city Many city theaters had to expand the structure and seating to fully meet the demand of the public. One prime example of this was the city of Chicago. Chicago's theaters were well known to be one of the country's most exquisite, beautiful, and well-known city for movie theaters. This city built and adjusted its movie theaters to fit half of its city's population due to the demand, and so its citizens would be able to enjoy watching movies every single day. This was something that really caught my attention because I never saw a city be so passionate in meeting the public's demands. Like everybody was obsessed with movies, and the city saw this as a way to try to fulfill their happiness, and they did everything in their power to try to adjust movie theaters so they can fit more people, so they can share the joy of these newly found movies, which I found really interesting. Some of the popular sound movies during this decade included Don Juan, starring John Barrymore, that came out in 1926. Al Johnson's Say It With Songs, which is a beautiful musical movie that came out in 1929. And the most well known, which was Walt Disney's Mickey Mouse and Steamboat Willie, which came out in 1928. This one was, of course, a very, very popular one that, of course, we see all throughout history and in today's age. Some of Hollywood's most very big movie stars were Joan Crawford, the talented Rudolph Valentino, and of course, the most well known silent actor that transitioned from silent acting into talking movie acting, which was Charlie Chaplin. And here's one of his most famous characters that he played during the silent movie era. Other well known movie stars that were during this time period were John Barrymore, Louis Brooks, Douglas Fairbanks Sr., and many other notable ones. One thing that did emerge from all this new press, movie, and impressive, talented movie and movie stars that were coming out during this decade was the Oscars. In 1927, Hollywood saw the new, impressive, talented, and popular movies, as well as movie stars that were emerging from this decade, and decided to establish a way to reward and praise them for these changes and outstanding work that we're doing for the film industry. So, the Academy of Motion Picture Art and Sciences was founded in Los Angeles, California, as a way to reward and praise these actors, actresses, directors, and simply everyone that was involved in movies. It wanted to reward them for the revolutionary changes that were being done in films and for the groundbreaking experiences and pushing the boundaries that they were doing. Although it was founded in 1927, the first award show did not take place until 1929. This award show honored and praised the outstanding work of the movies that debuted in 1927 through 1928. After this, the Oscars were known to take place once a year, every single year, until today's age. Here we have Emil Jannings, which was the first ever Best Actor winner for his performance in The Last Command of 1928. We also have Wings, that came out in 1927, winning the Best Picture. And then we have the talented Janet Gaynor, which was the first ever Best Actress winner for her performance in Sunrise of 1927. Also, two awards that caught my attention while I was researching this part was the Academy Honorary Award. This award is not presented or awarded every single year at the Oscars. Instead, it is awarded to movies and actors, directors, and anybody who has done a major impact in the film industry over the course of a few decades or years. For this specific first Oscar ceremony, the Academy awarded the Academy Honor Award to the jazz singer for its tremendous impact it had on the film industry for incorporating talking, dialogue, sound effects, and music into a movie so perfectly that it was able to inspire and revolutionize the film industry as a whole. Another actor who got this award was Charlie Chaplin for his performance in The Circus, as well as for his performance in silent films and other talking films, and because he was a very known, famous actor who was able to transition during this time period without a struggle. But the movie theater industry was not the only one that was transitioning, adding changes, and basically evolving during this time period. The theater arts during the Roaring '20s also transitioned, made changes, and revolutionized its industry because of the inspiration they took from the film industry. So the theater world during the 1920s was truly something. It was a bunch of music, a bunch of plays, but they were sticking in their own little bubble and they weren't pushing their limitations. It wasn't until they were inspired to make changes and incorporate more trends to make their plays and performances more groundbreaking when they saw the film industry add dialogue, music, and incorporate new plot lines and sounds to their films that they saw this inspiration and had a moment, an epiphany, to start incorporating and adding social, economic, and even political aspects and events that were taking place in the US at the time to try to make their performances more exclusive, to make their audiences feel more connected, and to grab their attention more. This led to the rise of musicals, With the addition of trends and arts incorporated into plays and musicals, such as jazz, it led to new comedies, musicals, and more contemporary writing to take place and emerge from this industry. Musicals became the most popular form of theatrical performance because of jazz. The age of jazz was very well known during the 1920s, and it overtook the theater world. It grabbed the attention of so many people because they described the plays with the incorporation of jazz as glamorous, lighthearted, amazing, with larger than life dance numbers. Here we have some of the theaters that were mentioned before. You can see that this one right here is playing the jazz singer. You can see all the line of people outside. Here we have Broadway, which was established way before the 1920s and is still around today as one of the most well-known theatrical art performances centers. Here we have a line of people outside the Yankee Theater waiting to get inside. Some of the most well-known plays that came around during this time period were Okay, which came out in 1928, which was a musical, No No Nate, which was also a musical, and Showboat, which is actually not a musical, but a very well-written play. But one of the most plays that stood out the most, brought in the most revolutionary changes, was Shuffle Along in 1921. Shuffle Along, or the making of the musical sensation of 1921 and all that followed, was the first ever African American cast musical. Its cast included all African Americans and depicted them in such a positive way that hasn't been done before at that time. It was the first time African Americans were even allowed to be sitting and entering the opera houses. It was also the first time African Americans were able to sell a Broadway show for full price instead of discounted and smaller prices compared to the other ones. It was a huge deal because this musical was insanely impactful. Not only did it help highlight and demonstrate the African American community in a positive light, but it also inspired other musicals. It showed and brought awareness and attention to how rich the African American culture was and how much talent there was in it. It's also sparked a huge interest in the theater world to further produce more African American musicals and to further incorporate jazz, their ideas, and more African American cast members in their plays. It truly set the way for African Americans to join the theatrical art groups and performances that were restricted before, because this was a time where the United States was still segregated in many states, where African Americans did not have the same rights, were treated really bad, they were discriminated against throughout half the country. So this was a very big deal that this play was so successful. It was able to prove that African Americans have something positive to bring, not to break out of their negative stereotypes where they have no talent, where they have racist stereotypes implanted them. It was able to break all that and show something positive and impact the musical theater world. The 1920s really set the standards for movies in place. With the addition of sounds, dialogues, and longer plot lines, the film industry was able to thrive and further push its limits. It was able to explore new genres, to create new genres, to further evolve its current genres. It was able to basically set the stage for people to push limit after limit and make better movies. And that's the reason we have other movies we have today, because of all the limits that were being pushed, because of this big change of adding dialogue in movies in the 1920s. It was able to give us the variety of movies and plays that we have in today's society. We have very controversial, long, amazing masterpieces of movies that we have today. Like, we have so many, and it's because of this one decision that the film industry made. We also have a bunch of plays that have more people of color and that don't discriminate as much as they used to because of all the impacts that the musical theater world and the film industry made together. The evolution of movies really pushed the boundaries and really changed the way movies were made. It made it possible for us to have new, creative, and unique ideas and for them to flourish and further push and grow the industry as a whole. It was able to make movies and plays further push itself every single year so they can be praised, so they can make a difference, and so they can overall impact the film industry as a whole. And I thought that was really cool because if it wasn't for this one decision in the 1920s to add dialogue, to further change things up, to experiment with the waters with it, we wouldn't have the movies we have today. And we have some very good movies. And because of the pushing and pushing the boundaries, They went from silent movies to talking movies to plays to musicals, and then it slowly throughout the years was able to make animated movies, animated shows. It was able to push the boundaries of horror, of comedies, of romance. It was able to do a lot of things, and I just thought that was a very interesting topic that I feel that many people are aware of, but many people are not aware of that. The 1920s was really responsible for shaping the way our film today, for its standards, its ideals, and for the boundaries it's continuing to push. And I just thought it was a really cool topic to research. And to end the presentation, I decided to add some of my favorite movies here on the last slide that were both animated, musical, and plays. So I have The Nightmare Before Christmas, Scream, Tangled, Ghostbusters, Shrek 2, Heathers, The Phantom of the Opera, and Grease. Those are just some of my favorite movies that would have not been possible or would have not been made if it wasn't for that 1920s decision and evolution to add dialogue, continue to change, and continue to evolve as a whole, which I just think is so cool, and I am really grateful that they made that decision to experiment. Okay, well, that's my presentation. Thank you so much for watching, and yeah, thank you.